Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping, the official podcast of MarvelSnapZone.com. Today we are going to start something a little new. We are now entering our first week of having a new card and a new location release every week. We've been kind of hit or miss when we've covered new cards and new locations in the past. Sometimes we talk about them the week when they come out. Sometimes we talk about them a couple weeks later. But going forward, we're going to start off every episode with a conversation about the new location and the new card. And I am joined by a returning guest and first ever guest on this podcast, Cqrbon. Cqrbon, I am very grateful to have you back on.
Yo, what's up? Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm super happy to be back. So
yeah, I mean, we're 40 episodes deep. It's been how many months since the beta started? Probably 7 months. A lot has happened in those 7 months, and it's been kind of crazy to see where the game has gone since that first conversation we had talking about one-cost cards to obviously seeing several of those cards no longer being one cost or no longer having the same stat line to where we are today. So we specifically have Cqrbon on today to talk about an interesting topic, which I'm excited about. But before we do that, we will launch into our conversation about the new card and the new location. And Cqrbon, let's talk location first. So Clintar is the new location this week. It reads, after turn 4, merge your cards here into a symbiote or symbiote. I don't actually know the technical way to pronounce that, but that is kind of like what Venom and Carnage are, right? A symbiote in the Marvel Universe. So you and me kind of tried to play some games before we started recording to just see this location in action. And essentially, it takes all 4 of your cards, if you have 4 cards there total, and it will merge them together to make one card with no ability, and that card will have the combined power of the up to 4 cards that were at the location. So let's talk. What are your initial thoughts about this location?
Yeah, this location is super interesting. It's really cool when they make these kind of like unique locations that aren't just straightforward. Like this one's a little bit like has a bit more depth to it, right? So there's a couple very interesting synergies, obviously, right? We tested it real quick, and the resulting symbiote does not have an ability, so there's a little bit of Patriot synergy there. It also is a great location to remove negative abilities from your cards. So, like if you have a card like Typhoid Mary or Electro or Ebony Maw, you can put it in this location. It'll just to keep the power stat or the original on reveal ability in Electro's case, but convert the power into something more useful and getting rid of that the downside of that card. So. I get it does have anti-synergy with a lot of cards that you want to keep their effects on the field, right? Like this is not a lane where you would want to drop Wong or another strong ongoing card.
Yeah, it's always so interesting with these new locations, right? Because it kind of shifts the meta for 48 hours. People are kind of just playing the rest of the days of the week. They're just kind of playing the decks they want to play. And when we have this new location, everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what works best? What is the synergy? What is the anti-synergy? What is the best deck to fight against the best deck with the location, if you know what I mean? The best counter deck.
Yeah.
So you named a couple of things. I mean, we could see some Patriot play. Obviously, having one card that you're getting the Patriot bonus on isn't a ton. I think there's more of the synergy, what you just described, kind of getting rid of the negative effects. You throw down a Typhoid Mary. You throw down an Ebony Maw. Right, on turn 3, after you've been able to put 2 other cards there with high stat lines, right? You put down maybe Lizard and Ebony Maw. All of a sudden, you're going to have a 12 plus power creature there. That being said, I said this to you before recording. I think kind of the counterplay here is going to be obviously Shang-Chi, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because people who are trying to play into this location hard are going to try to stack a bunch of power there, and then they may throw an armor down, but guess what? That armor is going to get absorbed right into the symbiote, and it's not going to have its protection. And then on turn 5, your opponent's going to throw down a Shang-Chi and just blow the creature away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There definitely is with a lot of these locations that build like big amounts of power. There's Shang-Chi is a very common counterplay option that's run in a lot of decks, and then kind of on the flip side, you have the like the benefit of having a ton of power there, right? Like you can also there's more synergy with a potentially like a Deadpool Venom deck, right? Where you eat this big card, make a bigger Venom. You can potentially copy that Venom with Taskmaster. You could even play Zola on this big card. But yeah, it's a super interesting location, and it's going to be really interesting to see how people build around it over the next couple days.
Yeah, I think one thing we both kind of questioned, well, I think you brought it up initially, one thing we don't know yet, and so listeners, you may know this by the time you're listening to this, but if you put 4 cards there, let's say you put cards there, turn 1, 2, 3, 4, you put 1 card down each, so you've maxed it out, it combines into a symbiote, and so your last card you played was at that location. If you play Taskmaster on turn 5, does it copy the full power of the symbiote, or does it copy the power of the last card you played there before it turned into the symbiote, right?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards I don't think it's going to, but it would be super interesting if it did. So I feel like that it's just going to copy the card from the grave, quote unquote, even though as it was played versus copying it. But if it does work that way, and Taskmaster does copy the big symbiote, then there's a whole bunch of synergy to be explored there as well.
Yeah. I mean, then there's a lot of crazy things that could go on there. So I'm interested to see. We'll have to play around with that. You never. I think Second Dinner does a good job of kind of giving us a straightforward idea of how cards or locations work, but there's always that edge case of, well, what happens in this one weird scenario, right? And sometimes they don't intend it to work a certain way, right? So it may work one way, but they intend it to work another way, so they may change that in the future, right? So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see here, see what happens here. So let's talk card now. These kind of go together because my understanding, Clintar is like a planet that kind of, relates to the symbiotes as a group. And this week, new card is Knull. Knull is a symbiote. I think in the Marvel lore, he's like the god of the symbiotes. And he is a 6 power, a 6 cost, 0 power card that has an ongoing ability where he gets the power of the combined power of all cards that have been destroyed in the match. I'm going to turn it over to you. What are your initial thoughts as Knull, just as viability, fun to play, strategies, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Knull is a super interesting card. I think this card has a ton of potential to be extremely strong in a few different decks. Obviously, the kind of the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Knull is Galactus, which is the new Series 5 card that we got not that long ago. And Galactus destroys 2 other locations with his unrevealability and destroys those cards as well. So all of those cards potentially feed into Knull, letting you play a massive 6 cost Knull on the last turn into the Galactus lane and easily win that location with that power. There's a lot of synergy potentially too. I think if I was to open Knull, I think the first thing I would want to try him out in is like a Deadpool list. I think because you're eating Deadpool over and over again, all of that power is building up into, your final Knull place. You get to build a massive Deadpool, a massive Venom, and then potentially a massive Knull on the last turn. It's just a lot of power, potentially at even 3 different locations. That makes it really challenging for your opponent to deal with. I think it's going to be a fun card. There is definitely some counterplay with this card. The card can be Shang-Chi'd. It's an ongoing ability, so you can also play Enchantress. So we may see if Knull sees a spike in popularity, you might see a little bit more leaning towards Enchantress in people's decks. But I think it's a super fun card. I think there's a lot of interesting ways to build with it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm here theory crafting as you're talking, thinking, okay, what's the ideal Galactus play, right? You get Wolverine on the board, you get Nova on the board, you play Wave. Then you play Galactus, so then you get a boosted Galactus and Wolverine in one location. Then ideally you play Death, right? Death's cost has got really low, and you throw in Knull, right, on turn 6.
Yeah.
And you have a pretty solid location there, right? So I think that's interesting. One thing, you talking about the Deadpool combination, I'm wondering, okay, like let's say you play a wave or you cheat out Knull early, whether that's with wave or with I was going to say Shocker, but I want to say Electro, or with I'm trying to think of all the cards that give you extra energy.
Psylocke, other big one.
So Psylocke, and so if you were able to get him out early and then you Arnim Zola him on turn 6, does that count? The fact that you destroyed him with all that power, does that then count towards the other 2 plus all the power that was destroyed before that?
Yeah. This I've been asked this a couple different times actually by a few people, like because the interaction it's a little dicey. I'm not sure how that would work. Best, yes, I am leaning towards no, that would not work. But it's just someone with Knull is going to have to test it, and we're just going to have to see because we don't really have anything. Like I'm trying to think if we have any similar abilities that we could compare. It's a really interesting situation. There's not really a similar. There's no way to test it without like someone just has to test it. So it'll. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, does it how is it registering the power of destroyed cards? Is it like whatever the power it held, whether from ability or naturally at the time of of being destroyed, or does it only count the initial power? Right? Does it take into effect like locations that were buffing cards? I assume not. Anyway, maybe after we're done recording, we're both going to jump on Twitch and search Marvel Snap Knull and find somebody that's streaming with Knull, and we'll have to, send him a donation to try it out.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall impressions of Knull. I mean, do you think this is a card that's going to see a lot of play? Do you think it's going to see play, once people are doing kind of competitive scene, or do you think it's more of a kind of a nuanced card that just works with 1 or 2 decks?
I think the card is very strong. I think it's a very powerful 6-drop, even if you're just playing it as a stat stick and not doing anything fancy with it. I think the card has a lot of potential in a few decks. A Galactus, like I mentioned, Deadpool, and then even I think there's a ton of potential even just in like a more standard destroy list, either just like an all-out destroy or like a death wave list. And I think he's going to give a chance for some cards to shine. Like I don't usually see that much Deadpool on the ladder, and I'd be super excited to see more of him. And another card is Sabretooth in particular, because Sabretooth you can keep destroying for free every turn. That's an extra 4 power each turn added onto the final Knull that you play. So I think he's going to enable some interesting strategies. Obviously, I think the best way to use him is probably going to be in a Galactus list. I think that is a really challenging strategy to beat without as some kind of counter card is going to be very, very challenging if they get that Galactus down on turn 5. But I think he has viability in multiple decks and will for sure see play competitively.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your thoughts there. Real talk. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Sabretooth needs to be buffed a little bit, whether that's like higher stat line, lower cost, and lower stat line? Because I just feel like nobody plays with Sabretooth.
Yeah, so I would like to see Sabretooth get a little bit of love. I think Sabretooth gained a bit of momentum a little bit with Galactus. He's played in some Galactus lists because he's just a 0/4 that you can put into the lane on the last turn. It's challenging because the problem with Sabretooth is you get more value out of him the more times you can destroy him, and you have to get him down. The earliest you can get him down is on turn 3. And so you're usually only destroying him twice maximum, and that is like not enough value generally to be good. Like, and I've tried a lot of ways to make Sabretooth work. I've tried Moon Girl with Sabretooth, get 2 0-cost copies of Sabretooth, which is good, but it's just very slow and clunky. So I'd be interested to see a potential like cost and power reduction. I think would be interesting because I think he has to be down earlier on. He has to be like on the board sooner in order to get value out of him, right? Yep. And obviously his power would need to go down a little bit because you wouldn't be able to make it a 2/4. He's the way too strong card, so he would need to be like a 2/3 or 2/2. And they could have some issues. They don't want to over. I'm trying. I can't think of the word, but like they don't want to overlay like Wolverine's design, right? Like because they're two like somewhat similar cards, right? That they don't die, right? And they stay on the field, right? They keep coming back. So that there's potential like clashing in the design space essentially, if they make the cards like the same cost, same stat line. So but I think Sabretooth is a really cool card, and I'll be interested to see if more people start playing him with the introduction of Knull. But I would definitely love to see some kind of buff for Sabretooth.
Yeah, you may call me crazy, and listeners may call me crazy, but I almost wonder if flipping the stat lines of Wolverine and Sabretooth would benefit them both.
Yeah, that's interesting as well.
Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen that way, but I just wonder if their abilities would work better reversed. Wolverine with the higher stat line where he's guaranteed to kind of stay on the board, right? No matter what happens to him. And Sabretooth at a lower cost, lower power, but you can get him out earlier, destroy him more times, right?
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Actually, I think Wolverine also is a little bit more underwhelming when you discard him from hand. And I think him being 4 power would maybe make people more interested in running him in like just a standard discard deck, not even a destroy list. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, we all know that the designers over at Second Dinner are listening to this podcast right now, so hopefully they'll make something happen. Well, awesome. Again, listeners, we're going to keep this segment kind of going every week on the podcast. The hope is that we can break down the new card in the new location. But now we turn our sights to kind of the main topic of today. So I want to tell a little story. I was on Twitter probably a week ago, and I saw this Twitter account I hadn't seen before. You can imagine the Can't Stop Snapping Twitter feed is basically only Marvel Snap content. And I see this account called Snap Clash Tournaments, was the name of the account, and it's at Snap Tournaments. And they posted about, hey, we know that battle mode is on the horizon, and it's time to bring the competition to a new level. So we're starting this, this competitive scene with Marvel Snap in these tournaments. And so I responded to the thread and I said, hey, I'd love to promote this on the podcast. DM me. And who DMs me but Cqrbon himself? So it was Cqrbon is behind this, and so brought him on here today to talk a little about this. And it was kind of funny thinking I was reaching out to a person I never talked to, and it turns out somebody that's been on the podcast multiple times. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Cqrbon, for our first question, which is, what is Snap Clash? What is the vision here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Snap Clash is a little organization that I've been working on for a couple months now, and essentially I am intending to be the one-stop shop for competitive and tournament play for Marvel Snap. So we're going to be hosting daily and weekly tournaments for Marvel Snap once we get the new friendly matches, or I've been calling it battle mode. I'm not exactly sure what the mode is going to be called when we get it, which we're supposed to be getting soon, TM, right? So this is mainly about, it's just kind of a passion project of mine. I'm trying to build up the competitive scene for this game, and just see how much of an interest there is in the competitive scene, and go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, no, very exciting. I don't know exactly when you created the account. It looks like on Twitter you just started posting here in December, but you're already up to almost 500 followers. You're in the 400s. Yeah, so it seems like at least in the week or two since you posted this, seems initial support is high, is what I'm seeing, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got in the Discord server we have a little over 500 people in there right now, and I kind of reached out over the last week, and I've been putting a team of different people together that's going to be helping run events and promote the events and cast the events. We've got a bunch of people lined up to do casting. So Yeah, it's super exciting, and I'm really excited to see. We don't even have the mode yet, and there's so many people that are interested in the competitive scene for this game, which is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about a couple of things you just said. So, you alluded a little bit. You said daily and weekly tournaments. Can you give us a little bit more insight? Do you have a little bit more of kind of what that looks like? Do these daily tournaments build up to the weekly tournaments? Are they separate? Can you enter both? Give us a little bit more context.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of this is just purely theoretical, right? Because we don't actually have the mode. So a lot of it's going to need to be tested when we get the mode and just see what works. But currently, I'm planning on running about, I would say, 2 or 3 daily tournaments, which will be just. They're going to be most likely smaller tournaments. It depends a little bit on the demand, like how many people are interested in playing in these, because I want to keep them, full, right? So I'm thinking, starting out like 8 to 16 to 32 players, right? In just like a straightforward like single elimination bracket and playing like best of 1 games. So those should not take too long. It should take roughly about 2 hours. Like, as I said, we don't know enough about the mode, like to say for sure. And then eventually I would like to implement a system. It probably is not going to be available right at the start, but I'd like to have a system where the winners, or the people that at least like place the best, potentially like second and third in these daily tournaments, are eligible to play in the larger weekly tournament, which will be the same format. It'll be a double elimination bracket. So you got a chance to stay in the tournament if you lose a game. And so that will be a larger event, and that will be a streamed event with casters.
Wow, that sounds super fun. You got me excited. These are the types of things. I think I'm good at a game, but I know that I'm gonna join in one of these, and I'm gonna get destroyed, and I'm gonna love every second of it. So
yeah, for sure.
Thanks for that additional context. Like you say, some of these things are subject to change, but it sounds like you guys at least have kind of your basic outline template that you're hoping to use here, which is great. Are there any big gaps or things you're just like waiting for the mode to answer the biggest questions? Like, what are the biggest questions you're hoping to answer before you can kind of solidify plans for this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely some stuff that we don't know, and that has a potentially big impact on the tournament scene. One of the biggest things that a few different people have asked me is, do we know if the mode is region locked, right? Because it's a big deal. I think Ben has said before in an interview that you basically send out a code to invite somebody to join, right? So that, to me, and the way he kind of worded it, made it sound like anyone in the world could challenge you, right? But if there's some kind of like restriction, right? Like for example, if I have players in Asia, right, that want to play against players in North America, right, and that can't happen, then I have to kind of reevaluate, well, how I have to run tournaments separately, right, for those two regions. So so I from the way it was worded in the interview, I'm pretty sure that we're going to be getting like global matchmaking for that. Well, it's not matchmaking, but it'll be like you can invite someone to play against you, essentially. So that's one of the biggest questions that needs to get answered, obviously, because that has a big impact on how things are going to run. The other thing too is that we don't know for sure if the player. So just to clarify a little bit more about battle mode. So battle mode is going to be, they've showed some gameplay on their YouTube channel back in, I think, May or June, I think. And it's essentially a mode, you play against each other, and the first player to get to 10 cubes, or to deal like 10 health of damage, or however they are going to word it in the game, wins that game, right? Wins that match. So the two that we don't know is, do you lock in a deck for that full, like up to the 10 cubes? I'm not sure how that works. We also don't know if there's any if there's any like settings in the tournament client, right? So for example, like, can you set it to the first player to hit 15 cubes, right, instead of 10? Like, we don't know if that's an option. We also don't know if there's any kind of spectator mode in this, which spectator mode would make it much easier to stream tournaments. Obviously, it does not have an effect on the daily tournaments because I'm not planning on streaming those. But otherwise, that means we're gonna have to do get either people in the Discord or through another program to get them to share their screen in order to get gameplay to show on the live stream for the tournament, right? So there are definitely some questions that need to be answered, and a lot of it is like subject to change, and so, but I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm ready to work with the mode that we get.
Great. No, I'll dig into a couple of things you said. I agree with you with what Ben Brode said previously, with being able to send a code to like join a match with somebody. That sounds very like not region locked to me. Obviously we don't know, but that kind of screams to me like you can play with anybody, right?
Yeah, I think his exact wording was something along the lines of like, you can send out a challenge to anybody in the world. Like, he said world, like the word specifically. So I'm really hoping that there's no region lock, because I would love to get as many people as involved from, like, regardless of your region, involved in the Marvel Snap tournament scene, right? I think there's so much potential there. So if I think it should be not region locked, which is good.
Yeah. Two other thoughts. One, I work in software in my daily job, and so I kind of look at what Second Dinner does as part of their development process and kind of look at it from that angle. And, they are very iterative, right? They don't usually kind of push, like, they're not going to take 6 months and build one thing. They're going to, release part of it after 2 months, then another part after 2 months. Kind of has been their style, right? Tweaking and tuning, which I really like, right? Because we get things faster, even though they maybe don't have all the feature set. So I'm assuming, this is my guess, obviously I don't have any inside information, I'm guessing spectator mode will not be there at launch, is my guess. But I'm sure it will be added, right, in an update to it, maybe, a month later or 2 months later after the initial release, just so they can focus on making sure the actual matches work and that all works great, and that's a bug-free experience. And then they can go add on top of that and, make that spectator mode accessible for people. That's my guess. And my last thought is, I think the biggest question that I have, one of the ones you mentioned is, do you lock in a deck? Can you bring 3 decks? Can you shuffle between any deck that you've made previously, right? That idea, because I think it could be not as fun if you just, you picked a random deck, your opponent picked a random deck, and you happen to have just the bad end. Your deck does not match up against their deck well, and then you're locked into, 2, 3, 4 matches playing that same matchup. That could feel really bad. Now, that being said, I think deck building mentality is definitely going to shift when you're playing competitively and you're going to be playing against the same person for multiple matches, right? That has not been the case thus far. In Marvel Snap, and so people are maybe going to build decks that are a little more versatile. Maybe they're not, they don't play into just one play style. They can kind of play 2 or 3 different ways, right? And people are going to focus on that kind of deck building. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I can talk a little bit more about the specific like, not restrictions, but like how the actual format is going to work. Like I said, a bunch of this day 1 and day 2, I'm going to be getting this. Part of the reason I wanted to announce this community so early is to get a bunch of people and just test a bunch of different formats and styles of stuff and see what works. Format that I'm most in favor of, that I want to push, is going to be like a closed deck list format, which means a closed deck list means you don't get to see your opponent's deck before the match, right? Some games like Hearthstone, as an example, run open decklist tournaments, where you get to see your opponent's entire list, of cards that they have in their deck before the match starts. And I just don't think that that's going to work in Snap for a couple reasons. I think a lot of the strategy and a lot of the depth in the tournament mode is going to come from recognizing what exact 12 cards your opponent is playing, and potentially even doing stuff like withholding a key card for multiple games, so you can use it to get a win off of your opponent later in the match, right? So for example, like if you have a Shang-Chi and you purposefully lose like a 2-cube game, so you can use him later to win an 8-cube game. I think there's so much depth there as well, and I think a closed deck list format is also going to allow players to bring like unconventional decks, right? Because a lot of times you can bring a deck that has like a lower power output, right? Like there's and you can bring something that's a bit more wacky, a bit more creative, right? And I just want to see, I want to bring a format that encourages players to get creative with what they're bringing to tournaments, and not just to be defaulting to one of the top 3 ladder decks or something like that, right? So I think that is gonna make allow for a lot of interesting play in tournaments.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love what you said. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have those players. The big brain plays in my mind are you bring an Enchantress or a Shang-Chi or an Arrow or something that's really disruptive, and you don't play it in the first match, right? And so you're going to be able to sneak those cubes away from your opponent by maybe holding off a game or 2 and then coming with the big win in game 3, for example, right? Because they're thinking, oh, I've got this deck figured out. I know, right? But secretly you have the Arrow you've been saving the whole game, and you're going to throw them off at the very last second, right? Very exciting, right? The thought of seeing this different play, right? Because there's a lot of great content being created for Marvel Snap out there today, but we've kind of seen, there's only so many styles you can do where it's everybody's playing only ladder. I mean, that's the only mode we have, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're playing against random people, and you're playing against bots, and all this, right? So this really will open up just this whole new way of playing, deck building, bluffing, snapping. I mean, really brings another level of nuance, chaos, whatever you want to call it, to the Marvel Snap world, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I am so excited for the tournament scene to develop for this game. I think it's going to be so much different than the meta for the ladder currently, and I'm very interested to see what people come up with.
Yeah. Well, let's turn. I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but give us a little more context here. What is the best way people can get involved now? They'll be able to get involved once this is up and running. What's the best way people can make sure they're informed and they're getting involved in the conversations that are happening now before this is a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the number one place to be if you're interested in Snap Clash and just the competitive tournament scene as a whole is going to be the Discord. It's growing every day, and I'll tell you right now that the daily tournaments are going to be run using a Discord bot. So you'll be able to enter tournaments and see your bracket and get into your matches 100% completely through Discord, which is going to be awesome because like potentially even someone on their phone could open Discord, get in their match and play a tournament on their phone, which is so cool. And then the Discord for Snap Clash is the number one place. There might be a link to it in the description of this podcast, or you can always check out at Snap Tournaments on Twitter, and there's the link for the Discord is there as well.
Yeah, there definitely will be a link below in the description of this podcast, so make sure to check that out if you're listening to the podcast, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever. You should be able to find the link below in the description. Very exciting. I am very excited for this. I'm very excited. What you just said, right? Being able to kind of go on Discord, sign up for a daily tournament, play on your phone. You're basically telling me that I don't have to work at work anymore, right? I can just I can just whip out Discord, whip out Marvel Snap, and I can get distracted all day playing in tournaments, trying to get my, push my luck and try to make it into one of those big weekly tournaments, which I think is super fun. But before we go, any closing thoughts? Anything you feel like we didn't cover? Anything you just want to give a shout out about this effort, about this, this scene that you want people to know about or get excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working on this for a little while. This is kind of been cooking in the background for a bit, and I'm very excited to be. This is one of the best communities for any game that I've ever had a chance to be a part of, and I am super excited to be working with a ton of different people. I put out a kind of like a questionnaire the other day in the Snap Clash Discord, and I've kind of built up like a team of different people that's going to be helping out in different capacities. And it's super cool to see people from different games, even names that I like recognize from other games, are joining in and are going to be helping out, casting or organizing stuff, promoting the tournaments. And I'm so excited that this is taken off in the way that it has, and I'm looking forward to providing the best possible quality tournament play for this game.
Awesome. Well, Cqrbon, very grateful to have you here. Very excited. I hope everybody listening feels the excitement we have, and I hope that excitement is contagious and you catch the excitement about tournaments. Make sure to join the Discord. Like you said, it's growing. There's hundreds of people that have already joined in the last couple of weeks, and so make sure you're in there. You're part of the conversation, and you can follow along as this story develops and as these tournaments start. Hopefully, I guess we didn't quite cover this. We don't really know when this feature's coming, but I think our best guess. Let me know if you've heard differently. But I think we're thinking January at this point is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like from comments made in the Discord by Ben, it sounded like that they were going to try and push it out this month. But I think with the upcoming Christmas season and just kind of like a little bit of the lack of news, I'm looking at like early to mid January is when I'm hoping to get the mode. So
Yep. So that's our best guess right now. Don't hold us to it, but we hope to see, 4 or so weeks from now, we hope to be playing in tournaments. So very excited for this. As Cqrbon mentioned, make sure to follow also on Twitter at, I just had it and then I lost it, at Snap Tournaments. Mm-hmm. And as always, shout out to make sure you go follow the podcast on Twitter at can't_stop_snap. So you can catch every new episode every week. Wherever you're listening to the podcast, we ask that you follow and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. We release these weekly on Thursday, so you don't want to miss that. Cqrbon, thank you for being here. And as always, it's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on, Michael. It's I love this podcast, and I'm super excited to be able to share this with you all.
Yeah, thank you again. And listeners, thank you for listening. We will catch you in the next episode.